Hello friends, welcome to your own YouTube channel, Achievers Data Engineering. This is part 7 of Power BI Beginner to Pro crash course. In this part, we are going to talk about creating and managing relationships in Power BI. So before we go ahead and talk about in depth about data transformations in query editor in Power BI, let's get into setting up some relationships in Power BI table so that we can get started with the visualization, and then we will on the go learn about data transformations. So any further ado, let's get started with creating and managing relationships in Power BI. All right, guys. So now we are into this Power BI report where we have connected to an Excel data source. So if you're following along to this tutorial series, in our previous videos, we have talked about how can you connect to a data source in this Power BI report and what are the various ways through which you can connect to a data source. Also, we touched upon the basics of data transformations in Power BI. So now let's talk about creating and managing relationships in Power BI. So in order to do that, first of all, we need to go into this model view. So if I go there, you would notice we have 3 tables available. So because we are connected to an Excel data source, which has 3 sheets. So all those 3 sheets are listed over here as 3 different tables. Now, why actually we need to create a relationship? So it might be a question for a couple of you guys, or maybe if you are new to doing some data analysis. So let's think of an example that we have this order details in this table and there are some transactions of sales. Now we want to do some analysis based on a region, right? So now we have person and regions details in this table. So in order to have some calculation and do some calculation and comparing values between these 2 tables, we need to have some kind of a bridge. We need to have some kind of a common thing in between both tables so that we can apply joins like we do in SQL. And based on that, we can do our calculations. So same thing is going to happen here. We are going to find some common values, common columns, and based on that, we will be applying joins. So this is how we create relationships. Now in Power BI, there are various ways through which we can create a relationship between multiple tables available in your model. So right now, as we have 3 different tables available in the model, so let's create relationship and talk about their properties. So the step number 1 is we can go on to this manage relationships option, and there's an option that says auto detect. That's a like best and simplest way to create a relationship. If we will click on auto detect, it will just scan all the tables available and it will identify any relationships that it can found, right? So as you can see here right now, it has found orders tables, reason column based on matching with the people's table and region column, right? So if I go ahead and hit OK, then you would notice it has created a relationship. And if you will hover over on this particular line, then it will highlight on which column it has created this relationship. Now, if Power BI was not able to identify any common column or any key value through which it can create a relationship between orders and returns, we can do it manually as well. We can do it by going into this like this manage relationships option. We can say new, we can select the tables. So first table would be orders. This is the orders table, and the second option is the returns table. Now there is an order ID which is common and available in both the tables. So we can just do that and make this table, like make this relationship as an active, hit OK, and if we close it, a new relationship will be created. Now let's talk about some other properties. If I again right click on this and go on to the properties, you would notice there is some other options. So one says cross filter direction, and there are some cardinalities that we can define. Now let's first of all talk about the cardinalities. So cardinality define how these tables are connected. So in this case, it says many to one, right? So what is happening over here in the first column, in the first table where it says orders, there are like multiple order IDs, right? So there might be duplicates. So for example, the one you can see in the preview as well, it's a duplicate. But in the second table, all order IDs available would be like a single value. So it's a many and it's a one. That's how the cardinality is defined. So depending upon the table, depending upon the values that we have in the tables, we can choose. Now Power BI is smart enough, it can decide the cardinality as well. But depending upon the situation, if you want to change it or customize it, we can do it from here. So in Power BI, there are 4 types of cardinality supported. So many to one, which is the case in the current scenario. One to one would be the case where we have like unique values available in both the tables. So there would be no duplicates in either table. Now one to many would be just opposite of many to one. So like one would be in this table and many in this table. Now many to many is a situation where we have duplicates in both the tables, right? So there is no like a primary key in either of the table. All right. So now talking about the cross filter direction. There are 2 options, single or both. Now, what is the use of this cross filter direction? It actually defines how we are going to filter the data. So let me try to explain you with an example. Right now you can see here, you can see an arrow that defines the way of filtering data. That means it says if we will take any values from returns table and try to filter the orders table, then it will work. Whereas if we will take any value from the orders table and try to filter returns table, it won't work, right? That's what the cross filtering is doing over here. So let's take an example. Let me keep it so simple. I'll just go ahead and take a table and let me populate couple of order IDs from returns table. You would notice I have taken from returns table, and now I want to take a slicer and I will take order IDs from the orders table. Now what I want is when I select any order ID from this slicer, which is from orders table, I want order IDs in the returns table should filter, right? If I do that, it won't do anything. You will notice it's not filtering, because in this relationship we have defined the direction of filtering from returns to the orders. So let me create a new page and again take the table, and this time I will take order IDs from orders table, and in slicer I will take orders ID from returns table. Now if I go ahead and select any value from order ID, you would notice that it is filtering. So this is how the filtration, like the direction of filtration, is like working, and this is what we define using this cross filtering option. Now if I just go ahead and make it both, so it will start working in both the directions. Now you will notice that it has got an arrow in both the directions. So if I go ahead and go in the first option, you will notice it is already filtered, right? It is already filtering. So maybe there was no return for these order IDs which I'm selecting. That's why it's not reflecting any value. Let me try multiples. Yeah, you can see here. So this order ID must have a return. That's why we are able to see. So then in nutshell, now the cross filtering is working in both the directions. All right, now there are some other ways as well. So if I go into the files,